Welcome to this edition of the High Strangeness Factor, copyrighted on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. I'm your host, Steve Ward. On the High Strangeness Factor, we explore all aspects of the paranormal, the unexplained, and the truly bizarre. We are especially interested in the individual's experience as reported, regardless of whether or not it fits a current view of mainstream science. And this includes experiences that may have a high level of strangeness associated with them. And first, I'd like to introduce my a new co-host to the show, Bill Boycott. Welcome to the High Strangeness Factor.
Oh, thanks, Steve.
And what I have to tell people is that you and I go back quite a ways.
By the way, you're probably 3 years old, maybe. I don't know.
Something like that. It's actually the story I was told was, I think, apocryphal, where my grandparents lived 2 doors from you guys. And supposedly you and I had some kind of a conversation back and forth at that early age. Something that went like, hey, why don't you come over here? No, why don't you come over here? So I don't know if that's true or not because I don't remember it. But at any rate, we we went to the same schools together, the same elementary, junior high, high school. And then when the not too long after the March 1966 sightings in Michigan, UFOs landing in our backyards, we were part of essentially a high school UFO club, the Aerial Phenomena Investigation and Research Center. And do you remember when we came up with that name?
I do remember going through that name. Yes, we had all these ideas.
Well, remember first it was going to be the Aerial Phenomena Research and Investigation Center. If you spell that word out, it's not very complimentary. So we were quick to the draw on that one. And of course, Kevin was kind of I guess he was the director.
Well, yeah, Kevin Collins, yeah.
Yeah, well, he had the garage where we met. Of course, Charles. We're going to introduce Charles Cox in a moment. We only met in the warmer months because it was not insulated, and Charles knows better than anyone what Michigan winters are like. But those were some pretty fun days, and we'll talk more about that as it goes on. We'll refer to it, but Rick and Kevin were the guys that actually started a kind of a magazine, which was not too bad, an amateur UFO magazine called the Ufo Phenomenon. And just before we introduce Charles here, I have to tell you, Bill, that I went to the Gray Barker Archive in Charleston, West Virginia. There's a separate building there, and there's a room devoted for. Now, Gray Barker, for those that don't know, was the head of Saucerian Publications in West Virginia. He's one of the first ones to go down and investigate the Flatwoods Monster. He published all kinds of really great and sometimes cheesy publications on UFOs. And he and James Mosley, the editor of Saucer News, were responsible for a few of the hoaxes that still live to this day. But when I was in the archive, Bill, I opened up one of the drawers, and there was a complete set of the UFO Phenomenon from issue 1 to 6 or whatever it was.
That's probably all there were.
That's about it. But we are immortal. Even though you and I didn't have much to do with the magazine, we were more. What would we call us? We were the
silent partners.
Perfect. Okay, let me introduce our guest. Charles Cox has expanded his title from just paranormal investigator, which he started to do in forgive me, ladies and gentlemen, let me start that again. Charles Cox has expanded his title from just paranormal investigator, which he started to do in 2002, to now include Earth Energies investigator. This metamorphosis was prompted by recent personal experiences and interactions with other knowers. He has investigated 77 private residences, 8 stores and businesses, and 10 cemeteries. Several noted locations in the U.S. to include Gettysburg, Waverly Hills Sanatorium, Ohio State Reformatory, and Prospect House. Also, the Mayan ruins in Belize. Charles has several certifications in paranormal research. He has a Bachelor's of Science degree and a graduate degree from Wayne State University in Detroit, Michigan. Also, he has served as an imagery photo interpreter with Army intelligence and has recently retired from federal law enforcement as an information specialist. He once held the title of research scientist at a leading edge research institute in Ann Arbor, Michigan. His duties there included assistance with research in remote sensing technology. He has been featured in several books on the paranormal and ghost hunting. He also has been in newspapers and on television. Charles appears in the DVD A Haunting on Hamilton Street, produced by Steve Shipley. He has presented at Michigan MUFON and for Southeast Michigan Ghost Hunter Society. He has been previously featured on The High Strangeness Factor. I think I've heard of it. Lastly, Charles has personally experienced both ghost and UAP, or unidentified aerial phenomena. He has participated in a CE5 event, and we're going to get into that later, with amazing results, and I can't wait to hear about that. Charles, welcome back to the High Strangeness Factor.
Hello, and thanks for having me back.
Well, it's great. I've been planning on doing this for a long time, and first I want to tell people that you can go back about 2 years in the archives, and I think you were my second guest, second, maybe third, I'm not sure, but that goes back a ways, and it was just you and I that time. We were not honored to have a co-host, so that's a pretty good deal. So let's start out. For those that haven't heard the show, let's talk a little bit about how it is you got here. What some people are experiencers and they get into this. I'm somebody that just has had almost no experiences, but was fascinated at an early age. And actually, Bill is responsible for some of that, but we'll get into that in a few moments. But Charles, how did you get to where you are now?
Yeah, I have a similar history to you. I never really experienced anything myself, but I heard so many stories from people. The one I always go back to is the one my mother told me, is that when she was young, she was very sick one night. And she was in bed, I guess, trying to shake whatever she had. And she looked out and she saw her deceased grandmother standing there. And it scared her. She ducked under the covers. But later on, probably towards morning, she heard footsteps walking, like if they walked from the location to a nearby closet, and that was it. She never saw grandmother again. And apparently she did recover from whatever illness she had. But that was one of many stories I would hear. So even though I've been pretty much interested in things that go bump in the night and UFOs and things for a long time, I wasn't really an experiencer by that time. However, since then, of course, I have stories and data and everything. So for what it's worth.
And did you find that the more you got into it, the more you did investigations, that you actually started to experience some of these things?
Well, yeah. Well, understand this. Personally, I get, I've developed this discernment that I can pick up things, like I can walk into a place that there's something going on here, and sometimes I can sense not only presence, but I know one time in Belize, I was standing at one of the structures, and I sensed there was more to that structure. Of course, I may be getting a little bit off the subject of sensing anything like ghosts or anything like that. But I developed discernment, definitely, to just feel or get insights about things.
I haven't developed that now. The guy that runs Michigan MUFON, Bill Konkoleski, great guy. He told me, now he's an experiencer. I mean, he's had, he has memories of having experiences with grays and so forth. And he's an extremely credible guy. He's got a couple of books out talking about it. He told me that sometimes people that spend time with him, that they start to pick up on some of these things, or they start to become more sensitive. So I wonder if that's part of it. If we spend time with people that are can't have that discernment or have that ability, if it kind of, for some reason, rubs off on us a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, of course, I've had several UAP experiences where I've actually seen things. And case one that's really comes to mind is one day I was sitting on my porch, and I live in the city of Detroit, of course, and a helicopter flew over, and I thought it was strange. I'm usually used to seeing helicopters that have some type of markings on them. Even the state police helicopter is a blue with yellow, state police markings. However, this one flew over, had no markings, and I didn't really notice any navigation lights either. So, knowing that sometimes helicopters are associated with UAP, UFO phenomena, I ran the house, got my camera, and kind of just stood by there. Uh, More than one helicopter flew over that time, but one did eventually fly over the freeway that's my house backs up to the Southfield Freeway. And I went around to the side of my porch to capture it. And as I was looking at it, this red shape appears. It just kind of clicks on like a light. And I'm looking at it, and in the moment I'm telling myself, am I really seeing this? What am I seeing? So I kind of look at it, but it just so happened I had camera in hand. So I was able to take some pictures of it also. But it kind of, yeah.
Did the color change at all?
No, it pretty much stayed red.
Okay. All right.
Pretty consistently red. But it did kind of blink off shortly thereafter. I waited for a little while. I do remember in the moment, too, knowing that sometimes people see these things and they report missing time. I just looked at the wall of my house to see how much sun was shining on it. It was early evening. There was still a bit of sun, and my house faces towards the east. So even though it was early evening, there was still enough light. So I kind of got a gauge of how much light was on the side of the house. But having said that, it did reappear. But the second time it appeared, it kind of moved over a little bit. My porch has a little bit of an overhang, and I was just wondering if it was moving over to get a better look at me. That's the impression I got. But it slid like if you would take a little slider switch and just slide it to the side,
Right.
And everything. But there have been a couple of other things, too, that have been interesting, but I've definitely seen a few.
I know it might be almost impossible to determine how far away it was, but when you say you had the impression that it was checking you out, any idea how far away it was? A wild guess?
Wild guess. It wasn't quite that far. I would say, it wasn't quite that far. If I would take a wild guess, 500
Oh.
feet. Yeah.
That's
pretty close. Yeah.
That's fairly close.
Yeah. Because when I saw the helicopter, it was right over the freeway. The freeway is like, right there at my back of my house. So,
Now I wonder if other people saw it, because I know there's been reports where you have a group of people and only certain people will see the object or whatever, and others don't. But you use the term UAP. Why do you use that in lieu of UFO?
Well, I've discovered that when you throw out UFO, it's a pretty loaded term. And more often than not, when I use it in public settings, people come back and give me a dissertation on why they think we're arrogant to think that we're the only ones in the universe. And
good point.
Really, some of the modern thinking about these things that they may not be extraterrestrial,
Well,
maybe.
In fact, John Keel said that he talked about these things sort of phasing in through the spectrum, the light spectrum, and he said they'll first show up as a red light, and sometimes they'll phase into other colors. Now, this may not have anything to do with your sighting, but I just thought that was kind of interesting. But what I have to say is that, Bill, do you remember the time I came over to your house and you said you watched this TV show last night called You Asked for It, and they had flying saucers on there?
I don't remember that, but I bet we did. I used to watch that show all the time.
Well, what I think they must have, Charles, I think they must have shown, I didn't see it, but when Bill told me the story, it just electrified me that there were real flying saucers going over some town. Yeah. I think it was the old, there was an old film over Utah, I think, where there were several like white dots moving through the sky, and of course they tried to explain it off as reflections off seagulls or something like that. So I think that's probably what they showed. But boy, that fueled our playtime and our imagination for a long time afterwards. Yeah. Yeah. And then the other thing you're responsible for, Bill, is introducing me to the books of Frank Edwards. those great anthologies,
Uh-huh.
Stranger Than Science, Strangest of All. I don't know if Charles, if you ever came across those.
No, I'm not familiar with those. No.
Well, that's the first place where I read about the Flatwoods Monster and the Kelly Hopkinsville Goblins in Kentucky, and of course he had really creepy stuff in there like moving coffins, and I didn't care anything about that. I didn't want to read about moving coffins, but
Really?
so Bill is actually partially responsible for planting those early seeds. So I don't know if I'm going to thank him or curse him, but we'll find out.
Yeah. Well,
Uh,
I've only recently really got into a bit of the cryptid areas or the areas of these, fairies, goblins,
oh
other,
yeah.
things like that. I mostly kind of, between ghosts and possibly, UFO and UAP type stuff, for a
Well,
long time.
you mentioned folklore, and I don't know if you're familiar with Jacques Vallée, who wrote Passport to Magonia years ago. He
Hmm.
uh, he compared, he took different traditions and folklore and showed how similar they were to some modern day UFO experiences like missing time and that kind of thing. It's the more you get into this, the more it seems like the lines of demarcation between what we think of as different subjects seem to kind of evaporate. So that's why I like the way the reason you call these things UAPs is because you're talking about unidentified aerial phenomena. You're not necessarily saying a flying saucer or a metallic disc or whatever. It's something that is truly unidentified.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. But far as crossing over, like getting more into the UFO UAP area, part of that was due to a presentation I saw given by David Twitchell. He's also a Michigan MUFON. I'm sure you know him very well.
Yes, yes.
One of the field investigators, and he gave a presentation in Westland on orbs that were experienced with UFO sightings. And of course, as a ghost investigator, orbs is one of our fundamental manifestations, characteristics of spirit phenomenon. And I can say that very surely because I think we're far beyond the debate of what orbs are. Years ago, it was a big debate that everyone thought that those spots you saw were nothing more than, dust. And I must say, dust has really impressed me because I've got evidence of dust doing some marvelous things out there. So for what it's worth.
Yeah. Was that in connection with the CE5 stuff?
Well, the C5 is no, you're talking about a separate period of time here. Obviously, the C5 was very recently,
And
and in
What's
let's
fact,
let, let's
E5?
let's define that for people that may
oh,
not know.
okay, yeah, it's close encounter of the fifth kind. And what if you are familiar with? Is it Hynex? It came up with the original.
Hynek came up with the first three, and then
Yeah, right.
I even read a book once where they added about 20 of them. I don't know. Close
Uh-huh.
encounter with aliens, going to dinner and a show before they examine you. I think.
Yeah,
I mean, they had
exactly.
everything there, but
Right, knocking on your door, say, "Can we come in and
but
abduct you?"
but
Yeah.
they
Anyhow,
use the CE5 in a very serious and specific way.
yeah. Well, basically, it's almost like you summon them in. You call them in a way. And where that happened is that I took that. I went on UFO cruise with sponsored by Divine Travels and Dr. Susan Slumsky. Um, at the cruise, I'll just throw this in too. It was attended by some of the big names in the field, Richard and Tracy Dolan.
Oh yeah.
Um, Linda Moulton Howe was there.
Okay.
Travis Walton,
Uh,
Michael Tellinger,
and let's
and
just stop for a minute. Do you know who Travis Walton is, Bill?
I do not.
He's the guy that out in I forget what state it was, but he was they were loggers, and he was they saw this craft come down, a flash of light. I'm really abbreviating it. He was gone for 5 days. They made
Oh, wow.
I've actually got a chance to meet him, so that was a real classic. And he has passed lie detector tests and so forth. And you mentioned the Dolans. Richard Dolan has written several books and really into this. And you mentioned, Linda Moulton Howe is a
in the book.
investigator. She goes all the way back to the 70s where she was investigating animal mutilations out west.
Exactly.
So just to kind of give people a general idea of some of the caliber of people that Charles got to meet on this cruise.
Oh,
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, that's great.
And also had the fortune to meet Kathleen Martin, who's I think the niece
Oh,
of Betty Barney Hill. You know.
yes, and not to drop names, Charles, but I got to meet her at the Exeter Festival over a year ago, and just a great lady. And I think you remember the Betty and Barney Hill incident, Bill?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Was that in Life magazine or
Yeah,
something,
Look
wasn't it?
Look magazine actually. It was,
There it was. There it is.
and it
Yeah.
was treated seriously. But
Yeah.
that's I met her their niece, and just a great lady. But go ahead, Charles. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, well, we're going to get back to the CE5 event that
Right.
happened there. Of course, what they were doing on the cruise ship is at night they would go up to one of the upper decks, and they did everything but the actual rituals. I think Dr. Stephen Greer, who pioneered this,
Yes.
they would actually have a ritual they would do, I guess, to become one with whatever they were trying to solicit. But they didn't do that there. They just basically just took the very powerful green lasers. Oh, I have to tell people, be very careful when you do this. Those lasers are very powerful. And they would see, well, nothing more. They would look nothing more than like a star. And they would take the green laser and encircle it. And one time when they did it around what appeared to be just a star, it started moving. And not only moving, it came down towards the ship, the vessel that we were on, the cruise ship. And it flew across over top of the radars and just flew off into the ocean. And even though I had my camera, at that time, my thought was that just take it in. Don't try to get a picture. Just
Right.
take this in.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Where was the crew? Well, like where was the cruise going
yeah.
or out at?
Yeah, we left out of San Diego, headed south to Puerto Vallarta,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Cabo San Lucas, and Mazatlan, Mexico.
I've done that cruise before. Yeah.
Yeah.
No aliens though, huh, Bill?
No. I was with the New Christie Minstrels when I was doing
Oh,
that.
Well,
we'll get to your past a little bit too later, but yeah, that's
yeah,
a little different.
yeah. If you recall, the TikTok incident was just out of San Diego, not far
Oh,
from San
that's right.
Diego.
Okay,
Yeah.
that
So,
film.
I mean, not that we were probably more closer to Mexico than San Diego when it happened, but just to point that out.
Well,
Hey,
well,
Charles.
oh, go ahead,
Charles,
Bill.
I was gonna. You mentioned the little people and the fairies and stuff. Have you ever heard or experienced anything with there's a tribe of Indians in Wyoming, the Shoshones, and they have stories of a little people that is kind of interesting. There's some places in the mountains, I guess, that they see them and stuff. Have you ever experienced any of that out west or anything?
No. I really haven't communed with any of those groups. I've read things about different places. I don't know if there was some place. I don't want to misspeak here about maybe in South America too. They have similar situation.
Yes, I'm
Small
sure.
people,
Yeah, the Ecals, I think. They're little guys that seem to have jetpacks that fly around. But there's also the Cherokees. There's a book, I can't remember the lady's name, but it said the Cherokee little people were real. So there's quite a tradition to the Native American, the different tribes and nations of,
Right.
of that, and also of Bigfoot, if you want to take it that far.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I've got to tell you, Charles, there's a group, I don't know if you're aware of it, there's a CE5 group out of Brighton, Michigan. And I don't know if you were there when they spoke. Two of them spoke at Michigan MUFON one time.
I think I remember that. I think it was a young lady and a guy.
Yes. Well,
They were,
I've been out with them a few times. They go out to a park near Brighton, and it's kind of there's an area where you can get to where there's kind of a rise and it goes down, and it's quiet and you're away from everything. And
mhm.
they do that. They go through the ritual, and it's all based on as you mentioned before, Dr. Stephen Greer, and he's very controversial. A lot of people think he's a charlatan. However, there's a lot of people that have been out with him on these investigations where they have experienced phenomena, and they told several stories, which I won't get into about that. But I've been out there a few times, and I'm the guy again that doesn't experience anything. But Cheryl Lynn Carter, which is part of our group.
Oh yeah.
Michigan MUFON. I'm sitting next to her, and she's got her tri-field meter laying on the ground. And every once in a while, my meter was kind of going off too. I was getting some kind of spikes. They weren't really spikes. It kind of went up slowly and then back down, and I couldn't understand. I mean, there's nothing out there, so I don't know what was going on. But she kept taking photographs of her tri-field meter, and then later on, she showed me the photograph, and you see part of a hand across the little window where the meter is, where the needle is, and it's part of a finger and part of a thumb. And it's a male hand, it's not a female hand, and it's reverse of what it would be if it was a reflection of her hand. And it's also very small compared to a normal hand, but it's as clear as anything. And I thought, what the heck? And that's going on during the, after the meditation, when people are kind of doing their own meditation and trying to open up. So I don't have any explanation for that, but that was bizarre.
Interesting. You brought her up. Maybe just change the subject a little bit.
Yeah, that's okay.
I always say that she and I have a shared experience. She likes to go down to the Serpent Mound in Ohio.
Oh, yeah.
You asked me if I'd been there You asked me if I'd been there, and I said I'd been there a few times, maybe a couple of times. But I know one time when I was there, it's a large area. It's larger than the effigy itself. There's an area where they have a couple of the mounds there. I guess they might be burial mounds. But I do know in the area that's over by, they have two restroom buildings. They're actually structures for the restrooms. And there's a clear area there. I was over there, and I got the impression of a large crowd of people. People just gathered there. However, at one of the meetings, she was sharing that she was there too, and she got an EVP of people chanting. And I had mentioned my experience too, and I described where I got it. She looked at me very shockingly. She said, "That's where I got the EVP."
Wow.
In the same area.
Now, go ahead.
I guess I have a impression about the Serpent Mound is that the mound itself, if anyone's thinking about in the sense of earth energies, the mound is not the energy source itself. There's another area above the mound. I guess in that case, it would be towards the south. That's where the energy, I think, is, if you would ask me,
Is that the same area where they found that crop circle? What was it, about 2004, I guess?
I heard that was outside some farm not far from there, though.
There might have been another one. Well, there was one actually right across, the entrance where you go in, and there's the road there, right that field there. And we talked to the proprietor at the little gift shop there.
Yeah.
And he said, "Oh yeah, this thing showed up, and I know of a guy that claimed of a really bizarre experience there. I don't know if he's credible or not, but anyway, a classic crop circle was either created by crop circle makers or through some other means, right near the Serpent Mound. And Bill, have you ever been to the Serpent Mound?
Is this all in Michigan, right?
No, this is Southern Ohio, Adams County.
Oh, okay. No, I have not.
And it's spectacular. Anybody has to do is Google it, and it's this huge winding Serpent Mound, and they've got this great tower you can climb up and get a good view of it. There have been a lot of reports, Charles, of paranormal experiences around there as well. But that's pretty cool that you got an EVP where you could hear the chanting. And it was clear?
That was she got the EVP.
Oh, okay.
Carolyn Carter got the EVP. I just got the impression of people gathered, a gathering of people,
Right.
And that's pretty much in the same area. So I'm just, like I said, I kind of came to the conclusion that may be where the true energy is. And the mound, I'm going to make a real off the cuff analysis. The mound itself may just be something like a directional arrow or something like that, even though the coils line up with the equinox and the solstice and all that stuff.
Right.
But it may just be like a directional arrow or whatever,
It's really spectacular, and it's really a good thing that it's been preserved.
Yes, very much so. We have to give the guy credit. I forgot the name of the person who spearheaded the conservation, but we got to give him credit because if you look around the whole area, all around Peoples in Adams County, there's probably a lot more mounds out there. Whether they form effigies or not, I would question, but I know driving through there is like, a miniature Cedar Point. You're up and down,
Right,
these
right.
up these roads and whatever. So
Ah,
And
for
it's
what
kind of the middle of nowhere. I mean, when I gone out that way, I hang on to my GPS for dear life for fear I'll be lost forever.
uh, uh, yeah,
Well,
right.
you mentioned in your intro, you talked about how you've gotten more into investigating things like Earth energies. Tell us how that came about and what you've been finding out.
Well, actually, recently I went back to an area where, back in 2003, I got a very significant, well, we just called them orbs back then, orbs, ORB, orbs. And it was very solid, very white, and very bright. And I got it at this location in Michigan. We have what we call metro parks here, and one of the larger ones is called Kensington Metro Park.
yeah.
And
Oh, sure.
I'll be honest with you, I can't even remember the reason why I even took the picture in the first place. Oh, I'm sorry. It was we had went out. I was working with a group of investigators, and I suggested let's go somewhere where there's never been reports of any activity, and just take some happy snaps. Just go around and take pictures. And I did take pictures in several different areas, and actually in one other area I got an interesting moving orb in that area, and it kind of opened my eyes. I said, this is interesting. I've never heard of any reports of any activity out here at the park, but I am getting things to include that very bright, solid white orb that's not far from the Nature Center area. In fact, there's a crossroad there, which I think is very interesting that it's even there. And that's what I think about Earth energies anyway. Case in point, I got that back in 2003, labeled it as a spirit orb, and left it alone for all these years. But since I've been talking to people, and of course hearing David Twitchell's presentation and everything, I started thinking, is there something more about the area there? Some type of energy or whatever. And I took everything that I had available to myself, a thermal imager, my EMF meter, of course, camera, and I do have a multispectral camera that
Ah,
shoots visual, infrared, and ultraviolet. And I went back to the area. First, I started off with the area in general and just took some, I call them control shots in a way, to see if there was anything obviously like, some maybe there was a heat source or something like that, which didn't really get anything. But I went back in the evening and took some photographs of the area. And did get some interesting spots on photography. Some, I think they could be just moisture droplets or whatever, so I can't really substantiate that. But the whole point of me doing this is to see if I can detect any energy, like an energy source. That if this ball I saw was more related to energy in general versus a spirit or whatever. And not only that, there was a little bit more behind that too, is that at one of the meetings, another member brought a photograph of a ball similar to that. And I was about ready to comment that we as ghost hunters get similar balls, but the woman instantly said, I know what this is. I think she said it was a probe or something like that. It's a probe. And I said, okay.
yeah.
I guess she gave me a little bit of a definition of a possibility. But if you listen to some of the various reports about the UAP phenomenon, people do kind of feel that that's what they see, either something like scout ships or probes. And some of them are even they're like autonomous, or they're not manned. Let's just put it that way. It's a better way to describe it. They're unmanned. They're either remote controlled. In fact, Linda Moulton Hall talks about remote control or self-actuating software or something like that, of that nature. But
Well,
yeah, yeah.
it's interesting that I think it was Ted Phillips. Ted Phillips was a colleague of Dr. J. Allen Hynek, and he investigated thousands of landing cases and in cases where the UFO or the light, left some kind of evidence. But he said that there's been kind of a change in the phenomenon over the decades, and it's gone more from what appear to be solid metallic objects to this more light ball phenomena. and
Sure.
he dubbed an area in southern Minnesota. No, not Minnesota. Uh, oh, come on. Which state was it? Anyway, where there was like a small area where all kinds of strange phenomena was going on. And he actually got a chance. He had never seen anything like me, but he got in this one area. It was Missouri. That's right. But southern Missouri. And he called it Marley Woods. And but they would see these, and this wasn't. And I like the way you said that you differentiated. You said that some of them could have been moisture or whatever, because the skeptics will tell you that all this stuff are just dust orbs and artifacts from digital cameras and all that stuff. But obviously, some of the stuff that Ted Phillips experienced as well was not a dust orb. And they almost look like they're moving in an intelligent manner.
Oh, sure. Oh, well, I've got evidence of that, too, that these alleged dust particles are doing some interesting maneuver. Case in point, of course, it's hard to describe a picture is worth 10,000 words, but I have a video of two of these spots, as we would call them, orbs. They're in someone's house, and they're going through like a hallway, and there's like a archway they're going through. So the first one shoots through. Now, someone say, well, that's like a bug. It is moving pretty fast, though. I don't think bugs move quite that fast. But the first one moves through, goes straight through. However, there's a second one right behind it, and it gets there, and it's a little bit off center from the entranceway. So it actually almost stops dead, goes sideways, and then continues on, you know.
Huh.
And they're saying, how can someone say this is dust? And it's probably not even particles being moved by air. They're being moved by propulsion. They're propelled, you know.
Right.
What have you. Yeah, too bad we don't have video. I would like to show that to folks, but
there's a researcher I'd like to recommend. Now, maybe you've stumbled on him. Paul Devereaux has written easily a dozen books on Earth energies, Earth lights, that sort of thing. And he years ago he published a magazine called The Ley Hunter, Ley, dealing with out of Britain, dealing with the ley lines and the way different churches and structures line up and so forth. But he's wrote a book called one of them called Earth Lights, I think, Earth Lights Revelation, perhaps. But he talks about cases where people see the light or the orb or whatever, and then perhaps it morphs into something or has something in it like an entity or a humanoid. And he calls them, he's got a term for them, he calls them Proto Entities. And that's really interesting. I don't know if you've ever thought about that or come across anything like that.
Well, you say that. I do remember seeing someone showing a video. It wasn't so much, I don't know if it originated from a light, but I did see how what they call an extraterrestrial just manifested out of the air, in a sense. Just kind of came into focus and went out of focus. And I kind of thought, too, that's probably one of the motivators for me thinking about, beyond ghosts, there's also more to this. But I think I've heard what you described before in different readings, too, also. About
right.
that.
Well, he's really he's got a lot of books out, and a lot of them are third-party sellers, but they're affordable, and just a fascinating guy. Did we talk about Rosemary Ellen Guiley before? Had you met her?
I have met her, years ago. She would attend Troy Teller's conferences.
Right.
Alton, Illinois, yes. I regret I never really talked to her.
Right.
But definitely, I've seen her there at those conferences.
Well, of course, you know who she was. And of course, we lost her over a year ago.
Yes.
And Bill, she was just a great researcher. And I knew her through the Mothman Festival. And
we mentioned her before. Yeah.
Right. And she told me, and this is, we'll get to your investigation at Waverly Hills Sanatorium. She told me, and a group of people, that she was there one time, and you know how they do that, where you go through in groups and so forth, and sometimes you'll separate, and you don't use any flashlights or anything. But they were in some part of Waverly Hills. This is in Louisville, Kentucky, right?
That's correct.
And they were looking into the dark, and I forget who she was with, but the guy said, "Rosemary, do you see what I see?" And she said, "I think it's a gray." And so they were there. Here's the Waverly Hills Sanatorium, supposed to be horribly haunted by the dead, wandering spirits, and they see what looks like to be a gray alien. So that kind of, piggybacks on what you were saying, Charles.
Yeah, well, incredible. But since we're on the subject about Waverly Hill, my experience when I was there, I was only there one time, but I had split away from the group and I was walking around, especially on the first
I got to stop you. You are a brave soul, because as the night was ending, I thought, I'm going to go off myself for a little bit. That lasted about 2.5 minutes. And then I went running back to the group. But go ahead.
Yeah. Well, like they say, don't do this at home. So,
That's right.
Yeah. Anyhow, yeah, I was all by myself. I even reviewed my video about a couple of days ago, and I'm walking around. They use that around Halloween as a haunted house, so you can see the goblins and stuff they have drawn on the walls and everything like that in my video. However, I'm walking back towards what they call the tunnel of death. The big long tunnel, where they made that tunnel so that the workers would have a way to come in and they can transport equipment. Originally, it was designed for that, and then they found that when people were passing, that some of the residents there were, they were upset with the dead bodies, so they started using it to transport the dead bodies. But long story short, I was on my way back that way, and you can hear I have my video camera going, and on the audio, you can hear a voice said, "Harold, send them back." I mean, it's okay. What does that mean? All right. So I got that. However, I met back up with Brad McCulker. He's our director for Southeast Michigan Ghost Hunter Society. And he said, when I was in the tunnel, I got the name Harold too. So I did a little reverse reviewing and looking up a few things, checking Wikipedia to see if any Harold names were coming up in any of the bios or the, history of that place. And with so many people having died there, who knows who it is, who it was.
Yeah, wow. It's one of those places where the death rate and the unhappiness and the trauma is just seems to be overwhelming. I went there. It was during a supermoon, but afterwards, Rosemary told me that oftentimes around the full moon. And even the new moon, the activity actually diminishes. It's more leading up to and going away from that phase of the moon, I think she was saying. At any rate, I was standing in the morgue, and nothing's happening to me. People are reporting, yeah, they got touched, they heard this and that. I'm thinking, yeah, okay, usual me, nothing happening. And I felt it was like somebody brushed their 2 fingers like across the top of my head. And it could have been a bug. So, who knows? I mean, that'd be scary enough, a bug big enough to do that to my hair.
Yeah.
I mean, that might be more scarier than a disembodied spirit. But that was it. And I thought, well, I'll take it, I guess. That's at least that's something. But a lot of people did not. I mean, some people had experiences, but a lot of people didn't seem to have any. But it's worth going to. I mean, it's it's a lot of fun because you do these things. You get they give you kind of the history and what people have experienced. They talk about something called what is it? The creeper? Did you hear about that?
Oh, yeah. I think they have that creeper there. I think a couple of places have something like that, but I do recall something like that there. Yeah.
I'm not sure that I really wanted to see that one. That sounded especially nasty. Let me just pause here. We're going to do our station identification. You are listening to the High Strangeness Factor, copyrighted on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. I am Steve Ward. My co-host tonight is Bill Boycott, and we are talking to all things strange with Charles Cox. Just for a minute, I want to indulge me here. We the 3 of us all kind of grew up in the same general area. And Charles, what major crossroads did you grow up around?
Well, on the east side of Detroit, so I was right at Jefferson. Well, I'll give the streets I live between Jefferson and Kirchville.
Okay.
That was on the far east side. That's pretty much where I spent most of my childhood days. We did eventually move to the northwest side, over near 7 Mile and Wyoming area
Okay.
and everything. And I'm ended up now. I'm back in the city. I did spend some time in Taylor, Michigan for a while, but I'm back in the city. I'm near Southfield and Plymouth Road at this moment now.
Oh, okay. I used to work down in Wyandotte back in the old days, and Bill and I grew up around 9 Mile and Woodward, so that's
Yeah.
those
Yeah.
were our stomping grounds back.
Yeah, that was actually in Ferndale, I believe.
Ferndale, yeah, exactly.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep.
Ferndale.
Yeah, and we were avid watchers of Supercar.
Oh, yeah.
Remember, that was, for those that don't know, that was one of the old marionette puppet shows, and it might have been the first one. I mean, the young
Yeah.
kids out there might remember, what was it, Thunderbirds and Stingray and some of the other ones. But man, Bill and I, we were on the ground floor of
We made our own
marionette technology.
supercar. Yeah,
Yeah, yes.
we made
Yeah,
our
I
own
was thinking
supercar.
about saying one of the characters would always say, but those were like British shows. They were
Yes, yeah.
in England. Oh, yeah, right. Yeah, I remember those too.
I wonder where that was out of, Steve, where they did all that.
I can't remember. I was reading up on it, and they even did that show called UFO, which was had live action people, but they used the same kind of special effects. You could tell they were the toy spaceships and the toy flying saucers and so forth. But
I always liked they would shoot things through, if they were in water, they would shoot things through like an aquarium where there's
yes,
fish swimming around. It was like, I got a kick out of that.
yeah,
It worked. Yeah.
great stuff. Well,
Charles,
go
have
ahead.
you ever spent any time near like Greenfield Village? Have you ever done work there?
Oh, yes. I've taken quite a few pictures down there. They have the Wright Brothers bicycle shop that's right inside the gate there.
Yes.
Not far from the gate. I took a picture there and got a very solid orb out of that. I mean, when I talk about orb, I'm not talking about these little fleeting, transparent things that could be anything. I'm talking about distinct, balls of light. I mean, they're solid, and I got one out of there for sure. Yeah.
Wow, that's great.
Shop.
Yeah, there's so much neat history there. Yeah.
Yeah, and of course I went over to the they call it the Firestone Farm, and I got a lot of spots out of the barn, but that's a lot of hay in there, so it could very well be just the hay pollen or the hay hay releases, whatever. But got a lot of spots in there. But I heard a lot of stories of the area. There's supposed to be one building that's supposed to be really kind of. Is it Edison's home or the Edison?
Yes, Edison's
His labs, right?
laboratory is there. Henry Ford disassembled the whole laboratory. I think it was in California, and moved the whole thing up. I mean, they took pictures of everything and put it back together exactly the way it is. And you kind of go upstairs to look around it. It's really an amazing place to look at the laboratory if you've never seen it. I worked there a number of years. In the summertime as a strolling minstrel. We would do these songs and attract a crowd, and then they would have a skit that would be played at the village and stuff. And I remember a friend of mine, Fred Leto, and we went up to the Edison laboratory. It was near the end of the day, and the guy let us go behind the barrier and look around at all the stuff.
Oh my God!
Well, it was really cool to go back there. It was, we were just young 20-year-olds, but it was really, really a neat place. That laboratory is really a cool place, the Edison Laboratory. Yeah.
Yeah.
You said you saw something over there? Or?
Well, no, it's just that I was told that there was activity.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah.
I also heard that on the Firestone Farm, I believe it's either Firestone, Firestone and Henry Ford, they were buddies, they were friends, but one of the two, of course, Henry Ford walks his estate down there in Dearborn, but I guess it's Firestone walks around there. They've seen him walking around there.
Wow.
So
the theater, I think there's a Henry Ford theater inside the museum that's supposed to be kind of a haunted theater. It seems like all theaters are haunted. Anyway. But,
yeah, I've got some things. There used to be a theater in Wayne, Michigan, the Wayne Theater. That was really a hot spot to say. I've got some interesting photography, and I have one experience. I was working with the Michigan Ghost Watchers group one time, and we were there, and I was once again by myself. I do this a lot, so bear with me. And I was by myself. I went down into the basement. First of all, I felt like I encountered a cold, solid wall, and it was the impression was whatever was there was telling me, don't go any farther than this. You stay right where you are, for what it's worth.
And so,
And
Charles, what did you do when you heard that?
I stayed right there. I didn't go
Okay.
any I
Listen, I would have been in the
there's
next
more to
county.
say about that. Yeah, I've had more than one experience where something tells me, I get that impression, and I obey. You don't put speed limits on this, okay? But long story short, I shared that with the Cindy Blake was the director of Michigan Ghost Watchers back then, and she said, well, she heard a story that at one time there was a gentleman who used to actually live in the theater, and he lived in the basement down there, and he wasn't too happy with people coming into his area, and I guess he passed away, and maybe that's what I had encountered, not in any type of form or anything, but in that impression,
Okay.
that feeling.
Yeah.
But talking about staying away, years ago, I was visiting Chicago, and I don't know if you've ever been over to the University of Illinois Chicago campus area.
Yeah.
They have the Jane Addams Hull House there.
Okay.
And I've been there a couple of times, but this one time I went there, and it seems like something was telling me, don't come in here. This is not what you do. That was what the impression I got it was saying. And interesting because, I just kind of say, okay, you don't have to tell me twice. I'll just stay. I stayed outside of the fence. It had a wrought iron fence around it. But when I did that, I took a picture up the sidewalk right next to me. I got all kinds of shapes and stuff. It's not just, people would say, well, it was cold. Yeah, it was about 23 degrees out there and everything like that. It's probably just your breath. Okay, my breath has eyes and nose and stuff like that. Great. Tell me about. There was clearly faces in that, whatever I got, the ectoplasm or whatever, mist I got. So it was interesting. Like I said, you don't have to tell me twice. I don't think provocation or being aggressive with whatever it is the wise thing to do,
Yeah, I'm more like who's the goofy guy on Scooby Doo that's always afraid, hangs out with Scooby, that guy Squiggy or no, I don't know what his name is. You can tell I didn't watch Scooby Doo, but I think there's a lot to self-preservation. I mean, curiosity killed the cat, so let's just be not too curious. But
respect too. They're giving them some healthy respect because partly because it's not so much I know exactly that these things will do bad things to me, and you hear a lot. YouTube is really flooded with a lot of these urban explorers and whatever who get in all kinds of mayhem with whatever. Some things things throw them, they throw things at them or whatever. But a healthy respect, and I think that may have helped me survive this all through this too, is just a little respect and just assuming I don't know exactly what I'm dealing with, so I'm going to at least it can't hurt. Like Troy Teller would tell us, it can't hurt. Be respectful.
right. Well, that's true. I mean, now that's I went out to I told Bill about this recently. I went out to a watershed area in upstate New York where a lot of alleged paranormal activity took place, and I stayed there overnight alone. And of course, nothing happened. I mean, I was ready, man. I had my night vision goggles, I had my camera, I had my Depends on, and it was a quiet night. And I even I had to admit that I actually fell asleep during part of it, even with a couple of 5-hour energy transfusions. And but I went out there alone, and it was a good mile and a half from any kind of civilization and not well traveled. So if I had hurt myself, that I could have been in rough shape. And as I told Bill, it was about a month later I started listening to the David Paulides and his Missing 411 interviews, and I thought, no, if I'd heard that before, I would have never gone out there alone. But let's see. Well, you've really covered so much. You mentioned about doing investigations. Was it in Ann Arbor, working on sensing technology?
Well, no, it wasn't so much investigating. It was just that I worked there with a remote sensing research company.
Okay.
And and basically we did about infrared radar, visual type, remote sensing thing.
cool.
Yeah.
Kind of interesting. Did you do something with remote viewing?
No, not with remote viewing. And I just, in fact, finished a very interesting book. You may be interested in knowing. It's by Annie Jacobson. I actually got that right here.
Okay.
It's called Phenomena. Annie Jacobson.
Okay.
Um, they talk about remote viewing, psychokinesis, telepathy. And it's a good historical, it's a good primer on the subject.
Okay.
Now, I want to say something. I got the book, I can't remember where I got it, but it had a sticker on the back which said, a certain organization, fiction. And I sat there, I tore it off, 'cause I said, they can't be kidding. This is probably like, as much of I don't know what you call it, a history book as any of our other history books,
Right.
it tells you about everybody. It tells you that Edgar Mitchell, people like him, so on and so on. There was not a Jewish, but the Israeli guy who would bend things, and so people would run up to him with a spoon, bend my spoon,
I
I mean, if that's fiction,
I've seen that happen before my eyes, and it wasn't sleight of hand. It just blew my mind. But go ahead.
yeah, I'm just saying that I recommend the book. It's Phenomena by Annie Jacobson. She apparently wrote other books too. Let me just see if I can do this quickly. I think she wrote a book called Area 51.
Okay.
A couple of others here. I thought can find that real quick without taking too much time here.
No, that's all right. While you're doing that, I just want to mention that I've read several books by some of the original military remote viewers, like Skip Atwater and Joe McMoneagle and Lynn Buchanan. And those, I'll tell you what, that whole area is fascinating, and it's not magic and it's not fantasy. I mean, it's something that they really accomplished.
Yeah. Well, I found that he wrote other books. Operation Paperclip. That's what might be interesting.
Oh, okay.
One.
All right.
Area 51, like I said, and the Pentagon's brain, the Pentagon's pearl brain. What I thought was interesting, though, as far as remote viewing, I've heard about it in a couple of sources. You think it's just someone sitting there looking into an area. When they first started, they actually had to have someone physically on the remote site, too.
Right.
So it was more like telepathy than just actually seeing the site. But clearly, because it generated a lot of interest with the military. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And clearly, what they were interested in, it was always realistic to put another person in that area. You just couldn't get in there. So apparently, it evolved to where they could not have to have the other person there, that they could just see right into the,
I think it was Ingo Swann, who was a really gifted psychic. He helped the military develop their protocols. And a really gifted remote viewer was Joe McMoneagle, and he found some kind of a missile site that they were building that was like ultra top secret, and it freaked them out. They went and called him on the carpet, and they finally found out that he actually saw it. He also found the Russians were building a submarine in some kind of a facility, but nobody, satellites or whatever, didn't know what it was and couldn't see it, but he saw it. But here's the cool thing, is that sometimes when they were practicing the remote viewing, they would do things like maybe take a photograph out of National Geographic or give some specific coordinates somewhere. And sometimes in those coordinates, McMoneagle would see into the future. He saw an apartment complex, and they thought it was a failure. 3 years later, that apartment complex was there. But then also, they would throw in a ringer sometimes, like something about UFO phenomena or coordinates on Mars. And anyway, that's another whole subject, but fascinating stuff.
Yeah, exactly. In the book, they talk about that, how they were giving them coordinates and they realized they were extraterrestrial coordinates and stuff like that. But I also heard what you said about one guy viewed an area and he saw, like he said, what they call them silos or something like that. And in the area, there were no silos. So he must have been seeing it before, after, or something, about, like you said, your past or whatever. There was another person, you mentioned some names, Angela Della Fioria was she was a civilian in that, and she developed some of the methodologies too, helped develop the methodologies of remote viewing. and
Right.
everything.
And Ingo Swann wrote a fascinating book where Rosemary Ellen Guiley knew him, and all the other remote viewers swear by his he's no longer with us, but his truthfulness, his veracity, and he some clandestine government group uh, took him to a secret facility, didn't know where it was, and he found out he was remote viewing the far side of the moon. And
Oh,
I mean, he
oh, wow.
actually saw structures there. And
Yeah,
at one point, he actually saw people there working. And at one point, it seemed like they sensed that they were being watched, and they kind of alerted on him. So he
yeah.
broke the contact. Anyway, it's a God. It's the book's been reprinted. Something about penetration, the contact with mental tele. I forget. It's got a super long subtitle, but just crazy stuff. That's
If I
something I always wanted to do. But go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to footnote on what you just said. I heard a little more to that story that they did that remote viewing of some alien, or I forgot exactly where it was, and the aliens that were there picked up on them. In fact, they were viewing a nursery. Apparently, these aliens were, I don't know, producing some type of. They've said that the Greys were really kind of like worker ants. They were the only purpose is to do work from whomever, okay?
Right.
And they were viewing a nursery where they were creating these entities, and one of the attendants noticed they were there and told them, said, it's all right that you're doing this, but you can't view this. You can't be here. Get out of here, and everything.
Well,
Stuff.
they of course they will tell you. I mean, Joe McMoneagle always said that uh, you would have to take some of the reports with a grain of salt, unless you can get feedback, unless you can open the file and see the picture or actually be there. There's always that possibility that imagination creeps in, and they call that AOL, or automatic overlay. So the good remote viewers are pretty good at separating that, but they have that caveat where that some of these things may not be actually real. They may be imagination, but still, some of the things these guys have come across. I mean, even I think it was Lynn Buchanan. One of them was following people after death, their consciousness and where they went. And
Really.
one was reincarnation, where supposedly the guy showed up in another body. Just anyway, that's another 2 hours, but
Yeah,
just interesting to pursue.
yeah. I was going to say something about imagination. I do this to people. I ask you, you talk about imagination. Try to imagine something you never heard of, you never seen, you never experienced before. Try to imagine, and then describe it to me in detail. You know, we talk about people who have seen things, or whether it be, UFOs, UAPs, ghosts, or whatever, and people say it was just your imagination. But a lot of times, these people can describe it in detail. Even down to like colors or whatever,
Right.
male, female, everything like that. So, is it always imagination? Truthfully, is it
Maybe
always
not.
imagination? Yeah, but be that as it may, I wanted to kind of go back a little bit. We
Yeah.
talked about my interest in earth energies, and another thing that kind of prompted me in that direction was the Skinwalker Ranch.
Ah,
You know,
yes.
I would really like to get a hold of some of Bigelow's data or results from that,
No kidding.
whatever he did there. I don't think he should just walk away.
No, I
For
don't either.
yeah, we need to know what was happening, what went on. Was it really what they said? Of course, obviously they proved that they had a phenomenon or anomalies or things happening, but you always seem to have some of everything there.
Bill, do you
Truthfully.
know about the Skinwalker Ranch in northeast Utah?
I don't.
That was there's a great book called The Hunt for the Skinwalker by George Knapp, an investigative reporter out of Las
Yeah,
Vegas, and Colin Kelleher, who was a scientist. Uh, uh, Charles mentioned Robert Bigelow, who used to own the ranch. He bought it from the Shermans. The Shermans were having all kinds of bizarre stuff going on there. Animal mutilations, UFOs, strange lights, strange voices. I mean, just a three-ring circus of the paranormal. And Bigelow, Charles, when he first came on board, I thought, this is great. We've got a private interest in it. It's not the government. And, maybe we're going to find out about everything. But it seems like he's more tight-lipped than the government was about his findings there.
yeah. it maybe depend on what they're really tight-lipped about. There's big. I heard. Well, actually, my doctor told me I didn't know what was in that recent bill, that relief bill or whatever. But one of it was that they would have to disclose their knowledge of, UFO, whatever, and whatnot. And I was just thinking, I said maybe they could do that. They could probably have no problem doing that. It's probably the additional stuff behind it. They can't really talk about. Who knows? I don't know. I would think he would do a great service to us if he was able to provide us something.
Yes, well, this new guy that has it now, Bill, they've actually done, last year they did a reality show based on it, and
Hmm.
it's not too bad. I mean, reality shows are a bit shaky anyway, but they're going to have another season coming up, and it's fascinating. I highly recommend the Hunt for the Skinwalker. And there's other people that have claimed to have had experiences on the ranch or investigated there, but Charles, that's one of those areas where everything is going on. I mean, it's not just cryptids. It's not just strange craft in the sky.
Exactly.
It's not
Right.
just poltergeist phenomena. It's everything, and it
Right.
all seems to be linked somehow. Have you given any consideration as to how these places? It's a little bit like Point Pleasant in the '60s, the Mothman, the strange sightings, the Men in Black, and all that. Uh,
Yeah.
any
Hmm.
any thoughts on how this stuff happens?
That's a good question, but like I said, I call it Earth energies, and people talk about things like ley lines, or even like with David Paulides with missing 411. He seems to think some of the characteristics of these people going missing have to do with, first of all, bodies of water. Of course, he talks about large bodies of water, but even in my little area back in Kensington Park that I spoke about earlier, I have a couple of the characteristics in that area. There's water, there's moving water, in fact, but there are also bodies of water. You got, I think it's called Gull Wing Lake.
Yeah.
There's a couple of streams that go through there. And the other thing he talks about are boulder fields, like boulders and rock
Yes.
fields. Now, how big does a boulder field have to be? Because there are boulders right at that intersection I spoke of. They have a exhibit of various naturally occurring rocks, metamorphosis in the sedimentary and stuff like that, right there in that spot. So I was just wondering if that may be um, all related to that. You can get either paranormal phenomenon is attracted to that, or does it create it? Like I spoke to you before about,
Yeah.
what came first, one or the other. But
Well, it's tied into folklore as well. And Bill, what Charles is talking about is that David Paulides, who has written now about 7 or 8 books on called Missing 411, and it deals with bizarre disappearances, not ones that are easily explained. And
Uh-huh.
sometimes somebody goes over a rise, and the rest of the people catch up, and they're gone. There's nothing there. Sometimes children disappear. They're found 15 miles later, a day later, sometimes unharmed. But how did they cover this terrain?
How'd they get there? Yeah.
A lot of people are deceased. Some people that they find can't describe what happened to them. They're kind of befuddled. But
Yeah.
what Charles was talking about, there's a criteria. There's people disappear around picking berries, boulder
yeah,
fields. Dogs don't track; they stop tracking. Well, Charles, apparently dogs were afraid of the fairies. It was unwise to go picking berries at certain times of the year because the fairies would get you. But they would be hide in boulder fields. And there's even some Bigfoot lore that connects to this. If you
oh
read
yeah,
Charles Cuchin's got books out, he's got a 2 volume set called Where the Footprints End, dealing with the paranormal aspects of the Bigfoot phenomena. So uh, it's interesting that people will say this stuff's nonsense, but there are patterns that, like you have pointed out, that keep showing up. That I mean, it's not fabricated. There are underlying patterns to connect these things. I guess we just don't know what the hell it means yet.
And are they all over the
Yes,
country? Yeah.
all over the world. He started out with parks. He was actually doing Bigfoot research. He's
yeah.
a retired police detective, and
Uh-huh.
he was doing research on Bigfoot, and some people came to him and said, we've got a real mystery in some of these parks because they're just tight-lipped about it, and you can't get the stuff through Freedom for Information. So then, but he even found that some of this happens in urban areas. And there's
yeah.
Charles. There's the book on hunters, where there's an incident toward the end where the lady in the deer blind saw this kind of like almost like the predator effect, like the blurs in the trees. There was something
exactly.
there.
Yeah,
remember that?
right. In fact, one guy saw that. He saw it before he saw the movie now,
Yes.
and that similar shimmering, whatever.
Yeah.
He said he saw that in the woods first, and then he saw the movie. He said, that's exactly like what I saw.
Those were the Shermans and his son on the Skinwalker Ranch. And I know a lady that was out with another researcher that saw something like that in southern Wisconsin. So, I think maybe I'm just going to stay home from now on. It's a little maybe safer. If I just don't go up and downstairs, I'm okay.
Oh yeah, I still like going out in the woods. I may not go out to Yosemite or any place. In fact, I was out at Donner National Park.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I'm used to these little metro parks around our house. The worst thing you can come across is an irate chipmunk or something. Whatever. You're not feeding them, they want to bite you because you don't feed them. But I was bebopping and I realized I'm in bear country. I have nothing. I don't even have a two-way radio or I can't even call for help here. So you go bebopping around. I didn't really back then. There was no thought about being just all of a sudden not being there anymore. But I was going to tell you about one story I thought was interesting about the missing 411.
Yeah.
This guy was rock climbing, and he was on what they call en belay. Now, in the military, I had to do some rappelling and stuff like that, and they call the air mobile extraction and stuff, and you're on a rope and everything like that, and they call it being en belay. He was en belay, and the guy was pulling him up. All of a sudden, the rope goes limp, and the guy disappears.
Oh, man.
It was more than just turning around and the person's not there anymore. He was physically on the rope, and all of a sudden the rope goes limp.
Wow, where was that, Charles?
I'm not sure. I think it's in one of the the national parks, maybe Yosemite or something like that.
It's that sounds incredible, but until you sit down and you read case after case, and I have to tell you that when I'm reading David's books, I will take it to like a restaurant where it's daytime, it's all lit up, I'm surrounded by people, because in a serious note, a lot of these things are very tragic. The person doesn't show up again, or they find the person or even the child deceased. And it's just it's heartrending, some of the stories that are told. But again, you've got these crazy patterns that keep showing up, and then you've got the other layer of of folklore. That whatever this is, it's been going on for generations. We just are looking at it in a different context sometimes.
Mm-hmm. But I mentioned going back to Skinwalker Ranch, that was one of the things that motivated me. But it just seems like you said about connectedness, and I don't even feel comfortable going to doing our house investigations anymore because how you tell the people, well, you don't have a ghost here, you have something else going on here, or an ET or Gray or something like that. They're already freaked about the possibility of a ghost. Now you're going to tell them I got extraterrestrials,
They say again, Charles, that's not in the manual. What do you mean a Gray? Come on.
It's Southeast Michigan ghost hunters. Okay. Anyhow.
Well, when you go back and do the people that followed John Keel into the Point Pleasant area after the Mothman sightings, other people went in and investigated as well. They found out that a large percentage of the people that saw this thing, the Mothman, whatever it was, were also they'd go home and they would experience an outbreak of poltergeist phenomena. So, this thing's supposed to be a cryptid. Then how does that work? And I interviewed Alan Godfrey, who's a classic UFO abductee from 1980 in Todmorden, England. He's under hypnosis, and he's in this metallic craft, and he has the classic grays are there, and this one entity that's much taller, and he looks over and he sees a dog, a large black dog about the size of a German Shepherd there. Now, what's a dog doing on board a UFO? And it's sort of like shades of the black shuck, the black spectral dog that haunts the ruins and the moors in England. I mean, there's that context there possibly, but you get all these things where you get these aberrations, like you've been talking about, where it just doesn't fit the manual.
Right, right. Yeah, and then, yeah, like you said about the change, even from the original UFOs going from the craft to now the UAPs and everything. And this stuff it's more mysterious than that. I mean, knowing if it's grandma's ghost is pretty straightforward. But when you got to figure out if it's grandma's ghost or whatever, or if you go someplace you're not sure if you're gonna, even like going like to a cemetery, and some cemeteries back up into like woods or something like that. So anything could be there, in those areas. But yeah, one thing I thought, how's our time?
Well, we're good. Maybe another 15 minutes or so.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to bring up too, since it's been brought up, especially by Zelia Edgar about the airships and everything.
Oh yes, and let me just remind people: Zelia Edgar is a lady that's been on as a co-host several times. She has her own podcast called "Just Another Tinfoil Hat," and she's really a great researcher. But go ahead, Charles.
Yeah, it's just that I was thinking there was a guy, William Mumbler, back in the 1860s, who started really pioneering the use of photography for like portrait photography and things of that nature. And not only that, he quite frankly took a lot of pictures of the Civil War and incidents in the wars and the aftermath of the battles and stuff for the Civil War. And I believe he also used balloons to take pictures above like urban areas and stuff like that. He was probably one of our first aerial photographers, back in the day. He also kind of, partnered up with Samuel Morse of the telegraph fame. He was also a photographer. Now, believe it or not, side note, William Mumbler was put on trial for faking photos because what he would do these portrait photos. Now, this is the early years of photography,
right?
And it was a very difficult thing to do because the people would have to pose for as long as 12 minutes in order for the plates to be exposed. But what would happen, they would do that, he would develop the place, and as I say, like one person would be sitting there, and then another figure would be standing over them, like a very, ghostly looking figure. But he was accused of faking these photos. And I was just saying, I said, that was back in the early days of photography. You're accusing him of photoshopping these photos,
Yeah.
back when photos themselves were, were not a fine art yet. But I was just thinking that I think he and maybe some others would get in these hot air balloons and go above the cities and take pictures from above the cities and stuff like that.
Wow. So the photographic charlatans were out there for decades before the present day. Go ahead.
I don't. If they match up, I think what she talks about is much later, almost closer near the turn of the century, where he was pretty much active during this 1860s, right, in the days of the Civil War era. So,
right. Well, it's interesting you bring up the airships, the majestic airships there were several waves of them, but there was the 1897 was one. Speaking of the Serpent Mound area, you know how we've talked about how in certain areas people will see UFOs, they'll see some kind of a creature or cryptid or Bigfoot and have other kind of phenomena going on. In Ohio in 1897, one of these airships was making a circuit around Ohio. At least there could have been more, but they were seeing them going kind of clockwise around Ohio and even lapsing over into Virginia, West Virginia. At the same time, they were reporting a wild man or a gorilla on the loose in Adams County, where the Serpent Mound is. And, today we would have just called it a Bigfoot. And this is all between mid-April and mid-May. And also a little bit further east in the Chillicothe area, they were seeing some kind of a strange panther-like creature. And large black cats are one of these things that keep showing up in these high strangeness spots. This thing was kind of odd. The legs were, I try to remember. You remember the dogs, the weird-looking dogs they said that they saw on the Skinwalker Ranch? They had kind of a big, ugly head, and the legs were, I think they were too short or something like that. Well, this cat-like creature had some of the same characteristics. It just looked odd. But the bottom line is they couldn't shoot it, they couldn't capture it or whatever. But this stuff is all going on at the same time. They're seeing these airships going over.
Right. Well,
Uh, you were a part of a DVD called "The Haunting on Hamilton Street."
oh yes, that was Steve Shippey. He produced that. What we did, there were several places in Saginaw, Michigan, that were alleged to be haunted. Now, Brad probably got more significant stuff than I did personally. I think he did get a video of something moving through an abandoned building, abandoned kitchen area. You could clearly see some type of shape moving through the kitchen or whatever. But the long story short, it was a series of locations that we went to basically do an investigation there up there in Saginaw, Michigan, and we were asked to reflect and give our opinions and stuff like that. But like I said, Brad was more fortunate than I as far as getting anything significant out of that. Yeah.
Okay.
But
Is that available on Amazon or anything?
I'm not sure how you can get it. It's
Okay.
called A Haunt on Hamilton Street. If you can just Google it, something like that. Like I said, Steve Shippey. In fact, there was a recent posting on Facebook about him. Apparently, he's hosting a new show or something, a new paranormal show somewhere.
Okay.
What have you? But
Heck, just about everybody and their brothers got a show these days. Hell, even I have a show. How about that?
so it's also challenging us as far as being able to do investigations because everyone is an investigator. You get a K2 meter and you're in.
Oh,
all
right.
you need.
That's right.
Okay, and the spirit box. You're it. Aside from anything else, but like I said, I would be really challenged. I think the last investigation I went to an apartment complex, and I had my trusty EMF meter, and I tell you, it just kept going off, and I realized the electrical system was really kind of messed up there. And I even asked Brad, "Do you want to continue the investigation? Because this is going to confound our any results." So we continued, but they say that people who are in a strong EMF field will feel presence, and things like that. I don't know if they will actually see things, but they will feel like there's someone else there with them or whatever in that case. But yeah, I was in one apartment, got the high readings around the electrical outlets, and they even took me over to another set of apartments, got the same thing. So I was telling them that you may want to think about where you're living here, because this is not healthy, to be on these high EMF fields.
Oh, yeah.
But getting back to the point, everyone, like I said, all you need is a good EMF meter and a spirit box, and you're in.
And an imagination. I know a guy that went out with a couple friends of mine, and they had some kind of one of these spirit boxes, and they were on tape. So he was. Something would come through and he'd hear something, and it might have just been radio or whatever, but some of his interpretations of what was coming through I think were a bit creative. So one has to try to be as careful and objective as possible on that. So Bill, when's the last time when's the last time you did an investigation with a spirit box?
Well, I just did one on the haunting of Hamilton Street. It's available on Amazon Prime Video.
Oh, the bootleg. Okay, yeah, we go.
It's on Amazon Prime Video.
Oh, is it?
Says right here.
Oh, excellent. Yes. Well, good. You don't get paid any extra for research assistant.
No,
I appreciate you. I really appreciate you doing that. That's very cool.
If we have time, I can interject one more thing about the spirit boxes. They have a method now that's really eye-opening. They called it, I think, the Estes methods, where they take someone, they put noise-canceling headphones on them, and the people even cover their eyes. Now, they're connected to the spirit box, and you have a group of people around them, and they may even face the person away from them. And what they will do, they will ask questions of the alleged spirits, and the person listening to the spirit box will respond and whatever to them. And sometimes they'll ask a question, the person, of course, yes is a simple answer, but it seems to be in response to the question. But keep in mind, the person who's got the spirit box can't hear the questions.
I've seen that done before, and that's interesting. It gives you another layer of, I don't know, credibility or maybe even objectivity to try and get something that's real.
I think it's a good method. It's a good method.
And you mentioned it was Dave Esther that developed that.
No. It wasn't him. This is a very recent thing, so it's long
Oh,
after he
okay.
passed. So
Well, tell us.
it's yes, whatever.
Oh, okay.
You know,
But
yeah.
tell us, I know we talked about this last time, but tell us a little bit about your experiences with and your friendship with it was Dave and Sharon, right? Esther.
Right. Yeah. The
They were.
internet.
I used to listen to them on a particular radio show years ago, and
Right.
they were very good at getting EVPs and so forth. They traveled all over, and they were just very personable. They were two people I would have loved to have met, but you actually
Right.
knew them.
Yes, I got along with him very well. We actually went out. When I went to my first visit to Belize and Alton High was with him in our group with him, and I've been on a couple of places. I was out at Donner State Park
Oh, you were there with them for
with them. I was
yes.
out there with them. Yeah, I did.
And just to mention, I was actually there at that spot in spring of '74, but I wasn't into any of this stuff. It was just very cool to be at these ruins. But go ahead with your story.
Yeah, well, of course, yeah. Like I said, I was him at my first go around, which I didn't capture anything significant, but apparently he did. He captured someone talking. Now it's not Spanish, clearly not English. So, you know, for what it's worth, we assumed it could be Mayan, and Mayan's not going to sound like anything you're familiar with because
Right.
who speaks Mayan anymore? But be that as it may, but he did capture some EVP in that location. I got something the second time I was there, but like I said. That was one I went out with him there in Belize, and also I was out with him at Reno, Nevada. We went to the old area. I forgot what they have a name for the old area of Reno there, I believe. No, I take that back. That's Albuquerque. I'm getting the location. I was with them in Albuquerque and Reno, Nevada, there, and everything.
Oh,
But
very cool.
Now you said was this Donner State Park? Is that what you call it?
I said Donner State Park. I think I said National Park before. I think it was the Donner State Park. It's clearly not far from Lake Tahoe. Near
Right.
Truck.
Yeah. Okay. So you're talking about the Donner Pass with the
Yeah, right, correct. The Donner Pass. Yes.
that's the place where they were stuck in the winter and going over the Oregon California Trail and
they believe they resorted to cannibalism.
Cannibalism. We believe that. Yeah, we don't know, but for
I
sure,
think-
they're pretty sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I did get an interesting EVP out of there. I was once again left by myself. You should never do that in those places. Anyhow, I was going back to
Man.
our bus, and I had my recorder going, and I got this very juicy cough/sneeze on my recorder. Now, you would think someone who were probably out in snow, in fact, the snow got as high as 20 feet deep, and say they were out there, and they definitely probably had some type of respiratory issue. This doesn't sound like even an allergy cold. It's dry. It's drier out there than it is here. So I know it was me. But this very juicy cough-like sneeze I got on my recorder, and I said, "Oh, yeah."
Now, see, I don't know if this is a phenomenon, Steve, but I wrote a song about the Donner Party, about what happened on that whole thing, and whenever I do the song after I'm done, I get really hungry. I don't know what that's all about. So.
Well, you go to tacos, right?
Yeah, I guess I don't know.
Okay.
Well, if Charles, if you ever disappear, we're going to say, Charles probably went on one of those investigations, but he went off the beaten path when he wasn't supposed to.
Sure. Yeah. Gotta be careful of that. For sure.
Well, I think that we should wrap it up. Charles, this has been just an absolute blast to have you back. Tell us. I mean, we've got a lot more to talk about, so you'll definitely be back again, and it won't be 2 years this time. But tell us how people can get in contact with you.
Well, right now, for the general public, I would say I'm on Facebook right now, so just use Facebook. No need to give them an email address. I think they can, they find me on Facebook, and they can.
If they type in Charles Cox, Detroit, they'll probably find you, all right?
I'm not sure how they would search, but definitely it's Charles Cox, and I don't know if I really put a lot out there as far as my paranormal experience or anything, but I'm Charles Cox, and the guy with the smile.
Yes, the nice smile. And hopefully, in the not too distant future, we can get together at a MUFON meeting that isn't virtual, and we can actually have those great brunches that they serve, and listen to the speaker together.
Oh yeah, yeah. I was actually thinking about that today. And everything.
It's about time. And Bill, hey, listen, thanks for being here tonight.
Hey, you're so welcome, Charles. It was wonderful meeting you and listening to the stories. It was great.
Yeah, same here. Yeah, nice meeting you too, Bill. Yeah.
And Bill, tell us about what you do. I mean, you actually, you're actually doing something you started in grade school. Me, I ended up on a paranormal radio show, but you actually make money at sometimes at what you do. Tell us about you and your wife and what happens.
Well, I actually met my wife at Greenfield Village in 1977 as strolling minstrels, and she kind of went her way and I went my way, and we reconnected again many years later in 2005. But I do musical programs on the history of the West. I travel, nationwide, but not so much lately, but do programs on the Oregon Trail. That's why I was familiar with the Donner Party and their expedition. But and I did a couple of programs with Wyoming Public Television.
Yes, and I got to see one of those. Really well done.
Yeah, one on the Wyoming history, one on the Oregon Trail. And then we just did, in 2014, we did a program, we called it the Holiday Roundup, but it's basically cowboy Christmas kind of stuff. And it was really fun doing that too. And
how did they find you and get your CDs?
Just go to my website. It's buffalobillboycott.com. Yeah.
And I also got to see you and Gary, our buddy Gary, perform at Washington Elementary, our old alma mater from many decades ago, and so that was a real blast. Well, again, Bill,
that was a real treat for me to do that. I mean, I've done many schools all over the United States. Southfield, Michigan, did a bunch there. Did a bunch in when I came back to Michigan for our 30th high school reunion, I ended up then starting to do schools around that area, and for a number of years did that area of the country. But St. Louis, Kansas City, Dallas, Denver, California, Washington, Oregon, traveled all over the place doing programs. It's been fun.
That's great. Hopefully you'll be able to be doing that again frequently in the future.
We'll just have to see. Yep.
And again, Charles, thank you so much for being here. It was just a great show tonight. So everybody sit tight. I'm going to do my closeout. The High Strangeness Factor was created by Steve Ward and Andy Mercer and is copyrighted on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. I want to thank our fearless leaders here at the network, Irene Ellen Block and Mark Johnson. I also want to thank Andy Mercer, my regular co-host, and the gentleman that produces the show. I want to thank Brian Zeller for the original theme music for the show. Brian is also my unofficial ombudsman, whether I need one or not. I can be heard weekly as a correspondent on Mac Maloney's Military X-Files on this same network. I also have a Facebook page called The Phantom Menagerie. And I am Steve Ward, your humble host here on the High Strangeness Factor, a displaced Yank on Paranormal UK Radio. Thank you for listening. I will see you all again in a fortnight. Take care.